I'll pass it back to Cami.
Thank you. And I'm going to immediately pass it over to our planning committee member, the wonderful Liz Start, to kick off the next session.
Thank you, Cami, and thank you, Rosemary and Nathan and Kyle. That was a great session. So I'm excited for this next. It's a two-part panel, and it's called "We Built It. Why Didn't They Come?" A lot of times when we need to address our issues at hand, or we want to improve systems, we've got to look at what isn't working. So I'm pretty excited about this group of folks that we have. I got to hear Alex Reya speak at our Oregon Association of Oregon Recyclers conference recently, and he had such a great activity for us that really got my brain thinking about how we're speaking and communicating with folks who use other languages, and the wonderful Moji Igun with Blue Daisy, and of course Terra Heilman, who I met years ago and started geeking out because she had this amazing reuse idea. So really excited about this panel of folks. So this first part is going to be pretty conversational with this group. And then the second part is going to be more presentation based. So, we all probably have felt this of like, hey, I put all this work into this program. I got a grant. I got funding to do this great program, and people don't show up. And I think it goes back to that old saying of nothing about us without us, and a lot of times it's easy to make, these decisions, or programming, or come up with these great ideas, when you're in the grassroots doing the work, to say, oh, this will work. This is such a great idea. And then when you actually put it out there in the world, it kind of flops, and it's disappointing and disheartening when you're putting, a lot of work into stuff. So I'm excited about this panel to really talk about how we are actually engaging folks to meet their needs and what their wants are, and really listening to community and building our programs around that. So it's not just what we have to offer, it's also what folks need. So I'm going to give each of our wonderful panelists just a few moments to introduce themselves and kind of their perspectives, and then I'll start with some questions. Why don't we go Moji, Alex, then Terra, since that's your order on my screen.
Sounds good. Can everyone hear me okay? Awesome. So my name is Moji. I live in Seattle, Washington. My pronouns are she, her. Just a couple bullet points of where I'm coming from. My day job, my work, I'm a sustainability consultant focusing on zero waste. So I work a lot with businesses. So in those visits and conversations with businesses, I get a lot of questions about like, where should this go? What should I do with this? What should I do with that? So I'm coming from with that perspective. Another perspective is Zero Waste Washington. I'm on the board of Zero Waste Washington and had testified for Right to Repair. And so getting to see the policy side of things and how we advocate that way. And then just from a personal, selfish standpoint, I want things like the things that you're working on in this room to exist. And so just an overall advocate and supporter of repair and reuse in all of its forms, and want to see you all thrive. So glad to be here.
Hi, everyone. I am Alex Reya. I work for the city of Eugene, the Waste Prevention Program. I'm a program coordinator. Thank you so much for having me here. I'm very excited to be able to share some of the experiences that I have working for the city with Fix It Fair events. A little bit about my background and how I got to be in this position was through an actual Fix It Fair event. The city of Eugene contracted me years ago to deliver a Spanish language Fix-It Fair to try to accommodate the Spanish speaking community here in Eugene. And both the city and myself learned a lot about what we know now, or is commonly used as equity and equality, and how to achieve that. And so my mission here today is to share some of that inside information, talk about how the event, how we unpack those events and what the outcome is. And hopefully you can come away with some ideas as to how you can use some of those techniques and ways how we navigate this event, so that you can guarantee that you are gonna have gonna create access to a community that otherwise may find it challenging to not only attend, but also understand what these repair events are all about.
Hi, everyone. I introduced myself already, but my name is Terra Heilman. And for the last 5 years, I ran the Repair Clark County program in Southwest Washington. And then before that, there's about 11 years of waste reduction, various things. I worked for a hauler. I worked for myself and have done lots of different things. I'm also just kind of an upcycling nerd. I love upcycling, and I create costumes from about 90% recycled materials, upcycled materials. And so I love the world of waste. I'm just absolutely fascinated by garbage. The more I learned about recycling, the less I cared about it. And so I kind of moved into the waste reduction world. And then, like I said, was running these repair events for about 80 to 120 people at a time, usually monthly. And so, and then we also, so during the pandemic, we started working with the library branches, and that definitely upped our game a lot when it comes to inclusion and kind of fulfilling the needs of different communities. And so, but I feel actually a little bit outclassed here, which is awesome, because I think I don't know a lot about this thing, but I am passionate about it. So I'm excited to be a part of this discussion. And thanks for having me. And I'm excited to hear how Liz will run us through this.
Yeah, thank you all. I appreciate that. And then to the folks who are out there listening to us, feel free to drop questions in the chat. We're going to spend maybe the next 15 minutes or so on just kind of a moderated discussion, and then I'll go through the questions kind of towards the end and ask audience questions that come through the chat. So thank you. And my background started in recycling and solid waste. And then, of course, kind of like Tara, the more I learned about it, the more I'm like, we need to reuse more. In case you can't tell my background, I love creative reuse. I ran a national creative reuse nonprofit for a number of years before I did consulting. And in my consulting work, I've had the pleasure of getting to engage with so many reuse, repair, and share folks who are doing the work. And part of that, a lot of what I hear is, what I had mentioned earlier of like, we did this program, we thought we could serve this specific community and no one took us up on it. Or, another thing that, we also hear too is, there is a disconnect as well. When I grew up very, low income, housing and food insecure. And, everything I had in my life was hand-me-downs, right? And so reuse is just built into your life. It's built into so many cultures. And so there is this like wow factor of having something new. And because our society has, basically, like our previous speakers were talking about, it's like this perception of everything has to be new. And so, so it's like balancing, like if everything is reused and, you've never had access to that, there's a different perception as well, and giving people your best as well, and there is some really good stuff in the reuse community that is the best, but a lot of times that doesn't go to the folks who need it. So I'd love to kind of stay there and really talk with you all on, kind of how are we building with community, not for community, and really co-designing and working together there. And I'll just, anyone who's ready to answer.
Happy to jump in. I can share a specific example from my work with Next Cycle Washington, which is an accelerator program in Washington State to get circular economy businesses off the ground. And that program specifically wants to make the circular economy look like the state of Washington State. And I think that's what most folks are doing in the repair world, is that they want the world that lives inside of their projects, organizations, Fix It Theirs to look like the world outside. But the challenge is, how do you make that happen? And so one of the examples that we did to make that happen, or to work towards that, is called co-design, which involves getting community. And community is a very big word to explain or to describe, but basically just the world outside where you are in your immediate area. How do you get those folks engaged in building the program or the event or the resource that you want? And so a couple of ways of how we did that. One, through having folks at the same level as the folks leading the project. And so the people funding the project, people organizing the project, and community are all at the same table discussing their priorities, their needs. And so if you're, for example, trying to start, regular fix-it fairs in whatever city, USA or in North America, wherever you are in the world, making sure that the people that you want to serve are able to communicate their needs directly to you while you're planning and creating and finding funding for these things. So I'll stop there, but I think that's one example of ways to get people all in the same room talking about at the planning stage before implementing the program.
Yeah, and if I may, that is one of the things that I have a lot of conversations with people who put together events, not just for repair events, but any kind of event, and they are within their plan is to make it accessible and equal to all communities. And unfortunately, once I get to the conversation and we get to the budget part, it usually just looks like, okay, we have this much money for this event, and we already, we got the fixers, we got all the infrastructure, we have everything that we need, and this is what we got left in the budget, and we want to use it to reach out to another community. So what that results in, or the result of that is the most typical one is a brochure translated into another language with a couple of pictures, a lot of information. And the expectation is that people are going to look at these brochures and be like, yes, we need to go to this event because it looks cool and it's something that we would like to attend. And unfortunately, the type of work and effort you got to put into doing your outreach and try to speak directly to a different community has to be one of your top priorities when you're budgeting for any event. And one of the reasons why that is because one of the biggest barriers with another community is the element of trust. People are not going to show up just because your logo looks great, because the picture in that brochure is of a person of color that it resonates with you just because of the image, but the content, who's going to be there, are there any risks, are they going to speak my same language, what do I do when I show up? There's so many questions unanswered just with a brochure or a Facebook publication or a website that has the Google Translate part. A lot of times people don't think of how the access ends in the moment where the person who you may have picked their interest tries to call a phone number and talk to someone about the event so they can get more information. Then there's no one that speaks their language on the other side of that communication, or that they click on that link that you have either on your Facebook page or on your website, and it takes them to a whole another landing page that does not have Spanish language as an option. So the biggest barrier I have found as working for government and even for nonprofit organizations, because that's kind of my background before I started with the city, is the amount of money that it's allocated to reach different communities tends to be the last bit of the budget. Does not include the access all the way to the end, to where the person knows exactly where they're going, what the event is all about. They feel safe, they know what to expect, and that also they feel like they are part of that event. The second part of that, or the other part of the challenge, is that when they are at the event, nothing there reflects that. Nothing feels familiar. The people, the environment, the language, what's going on around there. One of the biggest challenges we had in events is the presence of law enforcement as security, which it could be very intimidating and scary for certain communities. It may look like the event is not about a fixing or repair. It may look more like a place where you may be looked at differently or be treated differently. So before I keep going and more with all this information, I want to make sure that everyone has an opportunity to answer this question. But this is kind of like the core of why it's so challenging to have people respond to your survey that you did in Spanish, attend the event that you created and put so much work into, and simply just have a presence from someone that it's belongs to a different community.
Thank you, Alex.
I think that's awesome. It reminds me of kind of how this conversation came about for the summit. And the only thing I have to add is, or just actually, I'm going to elevate a little bit what Alex and Moji too, actually. I think you both kind of touched on this, that the most successful things that I found when I was working, not working right now, lucky me, the most successful things I found were working with a community group that
Terra froze. We'll give her just another second.
is, and if so, how? What does that look like? And being ready to change up our normal way of doing things, right? Because it's probably going to be different. It's going to look a little different than it might normally look. And so I think that is a really powerful thing. I mentioned the library groups, or our library system. They were phenomenal for us and to us. But I could list you, 25 organizations that are in my little tiny corner of Washington State that, when I would go to them and say, I had this idea, what do you think? And they were the ones who could answer it for me. They could say, that's not going to work because of X, Y, and Z. Okay, cool. What will? Do you even need our help? I don't know. Do you? I mean, usually the answer is yes. But reaching out to a community organization that already has presence, already has credibility, that I think is going to be one of the most powerful tools that you might get from these conversations.
Thanks, Tara. Thank you all. So we kind of touched on, this stigma. There's multiple stigmas around reuse and repair, right? Like we've seen, our world in general has just invested so much in landfilling and even recycling systems instead of reuse and repair. And, so we are trying to change perceptions and mindsets of, it's too expensive, or, I just need something new, or it's cheaper just to buy something new instead of fixing it. What are some ways we can combat that and really work through, building up this momentum and, at a grassroots level? We're never going to have the marketing dollars of Coca-Cola to do these things. And, but what are some just, really, good tools that you've seen that just really work to meet people where they are in their needs and really to overcome those perceptions?
I think in my world, coming from the Spanish speaking community, being an immigrant, what really helped me kind of own more that concept of what I have, I can continue to use, I can repair. It was actually shattered when I moved to this country, because where I come from, my world, you buy something and it lasts for as long as it stays together, and when it comes apart, you use those parts for something else. There's always a purpose for everything that you own, because you work so hard to own it. And so the culture in our society is, I'm going to use it for as long as it works, and then once it doesn't, I'm going to dispose of it. I feel that it all starts with the culture that you have at your house with your children, followed by spreading that culture around with your community, and making sure that elected officials, making sure that organizations, private companies, they all see what the community wants, because ultimately everybody serves community at some level. And if the community has a culture of, this is what we want, this is why we're coming to you, this is how we're showing you that, then it'll be a lot easier to have more monies allocated to events and things that are geared towards reusing and repairing. And how that happens in my world now, working for the city of Eugene, is that we understood, before I started working for the city understood that not because they were a program that was funded to provide education, people wanted to learn anything from the government. So they, rather than to think, okay, we know it all, we have it all, we have the monies, we have what it takes to make it work, they defaulted to asking community. And that kind of ties into what was being said earlier, is those organizations that serve directly those communities are the ones that understand how that community works. They're the ones who are already spreading out information and education, the ones that already have the trust of the community. And both, whether you're in the private sector or you're the government entity, that's the first place that you should look at and support and provide the tools necessary for them to amplify that message, to educate the people who are already visiting or walking through the doors, already visiting their events or responding to the surveys. It's a partnership between businesses that are owned by people of that community, or nonprofit organizations who serve that community, and people within government that have as part of their goal to reach those communities. Everybody has to work together to create this culture and to continue to push it through, so that it expands from just one community or one group or one segment of the population to the community at large.
Thanks, Alex.
I can add on to that or continue that conversation. Liz, in your question, you said like we don't have the marketing dollars of like the big corporate companies, and how do we compete with that? And I think there's one kind of idea that you can steal or borrow from those big companies, which is called language of the audience, which marketing copywriters use to speak to their clients. So using this idea of language of the audience, which just means talking in the way that your community or target customer or whoever you want to reach talks in, combined with trust and relationship, I think is kind of the key formula here. So figuring out how to speak to the folks that you want to be participating in what you're creating in their own words, I think is the key there. And so sometimes we use language or we frame things in ways that make sense to us, which may not make sense to another person, whether that's a language difference, an age difference, a cultural difference, just a values difference, whether or not they care about the environment or not. All of those things will vary how you speak to someone about what you're working on. And so I think finding out the way that they speak about their values and what's important to them, and then using a trusted relationship or a trusted messenger to communicate that message is a really key way to get across those barriers.
Thanks, Moji. Anything else to add, Tara? Or you ready for the next question? Well, I have a question for Tara then specifically. Really, we, in our email conversations, we've been talking about like how this work really just kind of flows and really meets the needs of folks who are neurodivergent. And, like how is this meeting the folks who are part of the neurodiverse community? And yeah, just I'll let you expand on that.
Well, I don't think I can answer the question, but I wanted to bring the question to the group. I wanted to, it's important to me, and at the offset, I want to say that I am not a part of the neurodivergent community, and so I feel like I'm doing the thing that is not fantastic, which is I'm speaking on behalf of a group that I don't actually belong to. Having said that, my partner is neurodivergent, and so he is very late diagnosed. We only found out just at the beginning of the pandemic. That's when he was officially diagnosed, and that's changed a lot of things for us, and it's changed my perspective on a lot of things. And one of them is that my events, at least when I was running events, were very loud. They were there's a lot of people. And there's a lot of, I think my events were designed by a neurotypical person. And so they were designed in a way that I think you have to have a fair amount of extrovertedness or comfort with really kind of advocating for yourself and saying, like, I'm here, I'm going to do this thing, I'm going to go from this spot to this spot, and I'm going to get my stuff done. And I asked my partner at one point, I said, so, if you came into this and this was the experience for you, and he said, no, I would just leave. And so, and that was a little heart crushing, right? Because obviously I thought I was doing a really fantastic job of, like, offering this service. And I was in a lot of ways, but it was an experience that, and I think about it often. And so again, I'm not of the community, but I wanted to, I guess, just make it seen, right? Like, bring it up. The other thing that I wanted to say too, sorry, this is a completely different piece, but the other thing I wanted to talk about is this kind of luxury of time or privilege of time. And so, in my experience, I would say probably 80% or better of the people who were helping were retired, and, kind of had the luxury of time. And so, that's another piece I think that we need to be discussing, or at least, I'm planting a seed in people's brains, maybe that, maybe the way that we are doing things does not make room for everybody, and how can we improve that?
Thank you. I appreciate you bringing that up. And I think too, and there's a volunteer session tomorrow that Tara and Josh Epstein are going to be doing, and, really talking about that, volunteering thing. Just because you build it doesn't mean they'll come, or it's the same people are coming over and over again. Not that you don't want those people to keep coming, right? But how do we broaden it, and, to make people, really feel more welcome. And, I'm gonna actually, that's gonna be my last question, that luxury of time thing, and that accessibility, because yes, with volunteers, but also, unfortunately, because a lot of this work is so volunteer powered, you're open, your tool library is open when you have time or capacity. Same thing with, like, opportunities for repair cafes, like when you have a venue, like, you're kind of tied to these things. But yeah, Alex and Moji, if you all have some thoughts on kind of this luxury of time and how it impacts this building it and people not coming. Just a few moments, and then I haven't really seen any questions come through, but I'll check again while you all answer that.
I can share a thought. So thinking about why folks may or may not participate because of time, I think that goes right back to what I was saying about who your target audience or who your community is, and thinking about their motivations. Because in some cases, like, I participated in a reuse repair event with Zero Waste Washington earlier this year, and it was like an all-day thing, and people were hanging out, and they brought their kids, and it was kind of like a community event to kind of chat with people, connect with people. So time wasn't really, and it was on a weekend, so time wasn't really a factor because folks had the time and space to do what they needed. But I think about another type of person who's, like, a busy person with an office job that may have had work on the weekend, or overlapping with the event, and may just need to come in and out, and the program was not designed for that kind of person. And so thinking about those factors being why folks that might not be coming to your event. So yeah, I think it's just thinking about the different types of people. So there are people who may be able to make it work, but then how do you decide for the people who are not being able to make that work? If there's ways to, you know, have drop-offs or, you know, sign up for time slots or things that make it easy for people to slot it into their day, because we're competing with things like fast fashion, Amazon, like they can just get it overnight. And so thinking about not necessarily competing with that one-to-one, but how can you accommodate for the sentiments that people may be feeling that they want their repair to feel like those other options. So it's not to say that we're competing against those things one-to-one, but just how do we think about existing within those other options.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I personally, and by the way, I just want to say I am part of the neurodivergent community, and I really appreciate shining the light um on that, because it usually also gets left behind, or doesn't receive the amount of attention that it should. And also, by being part of that community, I get to see things from a different perspective, even when doing this having this very conversation, how I need to gather my thoughts and bring them. It's a process that usually gets our culture sees it as someone who is not paying attention, or is distracted, or is someone who is not being engaged in the conversation. And so you wouldn't think I go through those things, but I go through those things all the time, where just to start off my conversation, I had to let people know that if you see my eyes wander, I'm just gathering information, that I am going back in time, gathering that information, bringing it to myself, and then delivering it from a very sincere part of my being. It's not I'm not making anything up, or I'm not coming up with something on the spot. And so with that, there's so many other things that need to be looked at. But how we have reached success in our events has been due to understanding, and there's a term that we use for it, and it's called cultural relevancy. And cultural relevancy can be applied to any culture, and even different communities, as neurodivergent community. It's something has a meaning to you, but it doesn't mean that it looks the same way to the audience that you're trying to reach. When one of the hardest things for me to try to understand what it meant was landfill in my own language, in my native language. Because if I translate that, even if somebody explains to me just like the basic of what that is and where it's located, I still try to figure out how that looks like where I grew up, and what do we call it. And what the biggest challenge, if you don't put some effort in cultural relevancy, is that you may be speaking two completely different languages, even though you're referring to somewhat in the vicinity of the same thing. I think that what key number one is to rely on those individuals who have that cultural experience to help you develop a marketing system or an outreach system from the lens of the audience, as opposed to from your own lens. And without without changing the context, without changing the message. It's just changing it, massaging it, making it look in such a way that is understood, like you would understand it in your own language. So that is, I feel that is one of the things that always gonna get in the way of people getting clarity on the message and prompt them to attend an event.
Yeah. Thank you, Alex. And we are now at time to move on to our next one. We did have a great question from Billy, and then it kind of is tied to Tiffany's comment about funding. So I welcome and encourage our speakers to maybe go in and answer that, because that is how does funding impact our events? And so, or maybe at the end of the next session, we can answer it. But thank you, Moji, Terra, and Alex. And since Moji brought up Next Cycle, that is another hat that I wear. Next Cycle Washington, our circular accelerator, which is basically an upstream and downstream 6-month project program to help circular economy projects and businesses thrive and grow, and provides a lot of great support and training for folks. So if you go to nextcyclewashington.com, our applications are live if you want to apply to be part of our accelerator program. So with that, thank you, Moji and Terra, but I'm going to keep Alex here because we're going to put him to work again. And then I'm really excited to introduce Alondra Flores of Aviña with Trash for Peace, one of my most favorite nonprofits in the world. And I adore Alondra. And then Dagmar Timmer with One Earth, and excited to have this group. So we're changing formats a little bit. So we're going to go now into presentation format. And so our speakers will have about 7 or 8 minutes or so to speak or to give their presentations. And then we'll do some Q&A at the end. So please get your questions in early so I can be prepared if you have some great questions for our speakers. And so Alex, talking about like that language difference and stuff, it was a really great segue into his presentation. So I'm going to hand it off to Alex first, and then I'll introduce Alondra and then Dagmar.
Thank you so much. And for the presentation, I am not sure, and I probably may not have the right information, but I don't know if we have access to the video that I had provided earlier, or the presentation that I had provided earlier. But if not, I can totally do it without it.
Oh, yeah, let me go find it and I'll pull it up.
Thank you. And in this video, you are, in a nutshell, are gonna get to see what I talked about previously, and also additionally, you are going to be able to see what an event looks like when you implement all these different components of cultural relevancy, language access, the participation of government, nonprofit organizations, community, and just the whole environment of this event was designed very intentionally to feel that it belonged, that people that attended felt that belonged, and that was their event. Even the branding of it, even though it wasn't necessarily translated, people recognize that the Spanish language Fix It Fair. They recognize the Fix It Fair as a brand that they're familiar with, that they're comfortable with, that they trust. Even though it's an event that it's funded by the city of Eugene, they develop that trust in government through events such as this one. And on a little side note, we have used this event as kind of like a model for other city departments to use in their own events. And some of those is, oh, there it is, Eugene Police Department. And especially during times where there was a lot of hard feelings towards law enforcement, this helped a lot as to how to develop that trust with the Spanish-speaking community, and you'll see that on this video. And I'm not sure if this part of the video is the audio working on it.
Tammy, you might have to reshare and then click share my
Version of our survey
audio.
yield minimal responses. Why don't our Spanish-speaking residents fully utilize our services or attend our community events? Merely translating materials into Spanish and disseminating them across websites, print, television, radio, and social media platforms is a good start. However, it doesn't guarantee meaningful interaction. The missing link often lies in the concept of transcreation. Transcreation as a term signifies the process of recreating messaging through the lens of a native speaker's lived experience. It involves making content relatable from a cultural perspective without sacrificing its context. This nuanced approach leads to clearer and more interactive communication. Transcreation is not just an option, but a necessity when it comes to successfully capturing the interest of a Spanish-speaking audience. It ensures that your message is not only heard, but clearly understood. One key component of transcreation is cultural relevancy. This element addresses the unique way that Spanish speakers perceive messaging through their own cultural experiences. Achieving messaging that includes cultural relevancy can be challenging, but it's not impossible. This can be accomplished by partnering with local businesses, nonprofit organizations, media outlets, and community groups that actively serve Spanish speakers. Language access is another pivotal component of authentic and interactive engagement. Even when transcreation of messaging and communication materials is executed masterfully, Spanish speakers often find it frustrating when seeking additional information. Effective language access goes beyond translation. It ensures that Spanish speakers receive all of the information, communication tools, materials, and resources in their native language from start to finish. Effective language access and cultural relevancy should always go hand in hand with transcreation, forming an inseparable trio in your outreach strategy. Let's examine a real-life example from May 2023, where the City of Eugene's Waste Prevention Program partnered with Peterson Bar Community Center to host the second Spanish language repair education event, the Fix-It Fair. Planning efforts for this event placed a strong emphasis on incorporating culturally relevant content and ensuring language access to welcome the local Spanish-speaking community's participation. Spanish-speaking residents were not merely spectators, but active participants in reducing waste and enhancing community resilience through repair and reuse activities, all while celebrating their culture. The event boasted the presence of bilingual and native-speaking Spanish repair professionals and volunteers, whose involvement was integral to its success. In addition to repair services, the event also featured bilingual family-friendly craft activities, games, and entertainment. Attendees had the opportunity to experience the joyous rhythms of ballet folklorico, traditional cultural dances combining folk culture with ballet. They also observed traditional danza azteca, ritual dances paying homage to the deities of the natural world. Repair breathes new life into old possessions, preventing waste, and contributes to a healthier local economy. The effectiveness of outreach efforts like these depends on building meaningful relationships with Latino community partners, business owners, and local Spanish language media. These relationships are the driving force between successful outreach and marketing to Spanish-speaking audiences. In conclusion, transcreation, cultural relevancy, and language access are not just buzzwords in the realm of community outreach. They are the pillars that support meaningful engagement with the Spanish-speaking community. By acknowledging the cultural nuances, partnering with local entities, and ensuring language access, we not only capture their interest, but also demonstrate our commitment to inclusivity. These efforts pave the way for a more interconnected and empowered community, transcending language barriers and fostering a sustainable future for all.
Thank you so much for sharing that video. And on my side, it showed a little slow. And I just wanted to let everyone know, if you have any questions about anything I've talked about, or some things you've seen on the video that they really caught your eye, please feel free to reach out to me. I'll be happy to talk to you individually during this summit, and also outside of it. So it is part of my investment as a human being to not only do this as part of my work, but also do it outside of work. And so I'm very happy to have separate conversations with people.
Thank you so much, Alex. That video is just so inspiring. I appreciate it and the great work that you're doing. Up next, we have Alondra. And Alondra, I don't know why I was reading your name wrong and I added an L and I was like, this doesn't feel right. But I'll let you do a quick introduction and then go into your presentation.
Okay, sounds good. Hi, everyone. My name is Alondra, and I'm the Environmental Promoter Program Manager with Trash for Peace, a nonprofit in Portland, Oregon. And I'll be sharing a presentation and also a quick video. So I just wanted to start off with sharing a brief history of the Environmental Promoter Program and how it came to be. In Portland, Oregon, there's a metro regional government, and during their 2030 regional waste plan, a lot of community members were brought on to the table so they can share their experiences and provide feedback and how they can participate in the waste and recycling system more. During that time, a lot of community-based organizations were really involved, and from that, it came to be that these new programs and outreach of waste and recycling from community members kind of flourished, and we partnered with another, it's called a Master Recycler course, but we wanted to create something that was more community-based and low barrier. So we came up with this Environmental Promoter Program. We partner with Home Forward, a housing authority site that works with residents in low-income communities. And through these communities, we bring this program where they focused on 3 themes: waste prevention, recycling, and healthy homes. It's a 6-month program, and participants receive a stipend for their involvement. When we think about like our curriculum, we really try our best to like co-create this, especially when it comes to communities' interests and needs. We really emphasize this a lot. They're really part of the planning process from the beginning to the end. We really like to focus on building connections and building that trust. It's really important for us, and see that, even though if the program ends, we still continue those relationships. We also follow this train the trainer model, where if EPs, environmental promoters, graduate and become alumni, they also become mentors, and then they kind of teach the next cohort. So this is really like community-based and centered. A lot of the environmental promoters and mentors lead workshops that they're interested in. Here are some photos of a mending workshop that we hosted. It was like a big hit and community members really interested in that. And one of our mentors, Narcisa, is interested in creating art out of recycled materials. She created some flowers out of toilet paper tubes, if you see at the bottom. And I wanted to share a quick video. I feel that will summarize the program better too.
Oftentimes, the waste and recycling field has been not really centered in involvement from community members, so we kind of had this interest of creating something that was more community-based, where there isn't a lot of barriers.
With the Environmental Promoter Program, we hire 10 to 15 people to do work in their community, providing workshops and activities around environmental sustainability, and they get paid a stipend to clean up their neighborhoods and to get fellow residents to join in. It's definitely a diverse mix. We hire youth, we hire elderly. It's pretty much open to the community, anyone who's interested.
The idea is to engage people on the ground with environmental work, especially communities that are disproportionately affected by things like climate change.
A lot of BIPOC and low-income community members are really involved and have a space at the table to come together. They create artwork out of, recycled materials, host workshops or events, neighborhood cleanups, and it's just amazing to see that growth in them.
Aprendo cómo reusar las latas, plásticos, la ropa que ya no usan y hago artesanías con esos.
They go through a training course where they'll have a recycling training. We take them to the landfills where they're able to see how things are recycled and what happens to plastic. They learn how to build things, different things that we use in our everyday lives. They also do personal projects as well, so they're able to get more creative.
What does sustainability mean to you?
I want you to use your hands on things just to get the connection to the food.
Ya aprendí a usar cosas más naturales para la limpieza. Antes usaba demasiado cloro, ahora yo preparo mis recetas con las herramientas que me han dado aquí para aprender a hacerlas y otras que yo he estado inventando.
The goal is that once they finish the training, they'll eventually become mentors and then train new residents who are in that neighborhood. So we're trying to build something bigger.
Instead of top-down learning, it's people in the community teaching each other.
The mission is to build a sense of community while cleaning up the community. But that looks different for different people. A big portion of that is really just building a sense of community and being able to come out and talk to your neighbors and have events and really work together and provide work opportunities.
It's really about supporting them, but also pushing them to their growth.
It's an opportunity that provides other opportunities. I actually grew up in one of the communities they worked with. That was my safe haven. I ended up sticking with it. Now I work for Trash for Peace.
I'm also happy to share more information too, and feel free to reach out. My last slide is on just, sharing some photos about the projects that some of the environmental promoters have done. This is Lucia. She's an environmental promoter alumni. She has created piñatas out of recycled materials. And Amy Chong, she is a mentor at New Columbia apartment complexes that we work at. She hosts mending workshops each month. And we also do a lot of outreach at bulky waste events, which bulky waste refers to large furniture events that we've been hosting in the spring and summer. Yeah, and that is my presentation. Thank you, everyone, for listening.
Thank you, Alondra. I just need to say again, if you have a chance to visit Trash for Peace and their work, they are co-design in action at the grassroots community level. I'm so fortunate to get to work with Alondra and the folks at Trash for Peace. Thank you so much. And closing us out is Dagmar to, really talk about, the perspectives of, where people are and how do you reach people where they are to kind of bring us all together, and with our previous, we built it, why didn't they come? We want to make sure that we're closing out on like all these great, examples and closing out with some resources for you all. So Dagmar, I'm going to take it over to you.
Thank you so much. And what's super interesting and diverse presentation. So thank you for the great care with which you've pulled together this summit. I wanted to share with you about motivations for lighter living action. And it was Cami actually that's worked with these before that thought that they might fill an interesting extra piece to the conversations that we're having today. So these are called motivations for lighter living action. And those actions include things like repair. And so how do we kind of bring more people into this community movement, both as fixers, but also as participants? And I wanted to start by acknowledging that I'm joining from the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh First Nations out of Canada. And that it's sort of serves as a reminder that we should all be walking lightly and also working mindfully on what is unceded territory here. So the Canadian Insight study that I'm going to tell you about actually came from Finland. And Rosemary Cooper from the Share, Reuse, Repair Initiative and One Earth Living brought this over to Canada. And we did research into what motivates people around a whole set of decisions that they're making in their daily lives. These are motivational research segments. They are shared motivations, not groups of people. So, when I talk about waste not, want not, or other types of segments, think of them as like that we all have different reasons why we do things in our lives. And so that those motivations might be shared, but that's not the same as saying that, Gen X is a waste not, want not, for example. So what often happens with research insights is that they become kind of rarefied and they're only available to like large companies and stuff like that. What we wanted to do was to actually bring this into as an offering that is available to the public and a public asset. And so we did what is a really rigorous study with 20 in-depth interviews in British Columbia and surveyed 1,500 citizens about what they do, like what kind of actions they take and what kind of values and attitudes that they bring into that. And that work was sponsored by Vancity, which is our credit union here, and Sitra, which is the Finnish Innovation Fund. And we also asked lots and lots of other things of people. And so, for example, we asked them about whether they see their lives as busy or less busy. And so I thought I just threw that into this slide to just say that it was kind of interesting and unexpected that about half the people that were interviewed were actually said their life was not very busy at all. And that the other half said that they were like very, very busy. And so that's also really interesting to bear in mind as we think about who we're engaging and how we make things accessible. But it's not the primary purpose of this presentation, where I just wanted to introduce you at a super high level to these 7 motivations that were Canadian motivations, these BC motivations. On the top here, you see people that are motivated by the planet in their daily actions. And on the bottom, you see ones where other motivations are actually playing a bigger role in the actions that they take in their daily lives. And towards the right, you have sort of more sustainable living actions in their daily lives. And on the left, you have a life that might have fewer of those sustainable living actions be part of their life. And so too often we kind of talk as if the only folks to bring into the room are the ones who are planet motivated. But like Rosemary said, that's just a small percentage. It's like a third of the people who are motivated by the planet in their daily lives. It doesn't mean they don't care about climate issues, but it means that they're daily life decisions. And then most people are actually doing actions, both aligned and unaligned, that are and are not consciously motivated by that. So we're going to come back to eco trends for a moment, but I just wanted to say that of those two that are more planet motivated, the Healthy Life and Planet is kind of your systems thinker. It's folks that are thinking in the way in which sustainability is also a health and human well-being perspective. And eco trends is like, I've heard a lot of people talking about the environment or about social justice. How can I contribute to this movement? How am I part of this movement? So super different even in terms of messaging to those. So like I said, we asked about all kinds of really specific actions, and then we categorized these motivations by whether they were the first folks that might do repairing first or buy it before buying new, whether they were convincible, like they were open to it, or whether they were kind of disinterested in that whole question. And so that helps us to understand that if we message for these different segments, for example, or even these ones, we might bring a lot more people into the repair movement than we have before. So I'm just going to play a quick clip from Minaj, who is 43, who has the Waste Not Want Not segment.
I've never seen like my parents who buying things like, okay, this is good quality, this is bad quality. And back home in India, if anything goes bad, they don't just throw it. They repair themselves or they call somebody to repair. So I got that thing from there, and still I do the same thing. If something like furniture or something, then I try to fix myself. I have bought all the tools rather than spending money on the new furniture. I rather fix the old one and make it last longer.
So that's coming from a space where that is something that Minaj is really used to, and therefore that's one of the reasons why it feels sort of like there's no way that one would just throw it out. Of course, you would look at ways to repair it. On this next slide, these are 3 very real statements that people were making, and they tie to different segments that we had. So in the middle here, we see that same segment of Waste Not Want Not. This woman is talking about buying good quality and only buying what she needs and then not throwing it out, but repairing. So that's somebody who also is coming at the repair movement, but from that perspective. On our left, we have Joe, and Joe is basically someone who's coming at it from a practical traditions. Says, I like to repair things and rather than throw them out. Speaks about those repair skills that are being coming out of practice. And with rugged independence, which was another one, this person here was really coming at it saying, I can do this myself. This is really about me asserting my own independence, and I look for durability and utility. And so my last messages I just wanted to share are that the Repair Cafe movement already has language that kind of speaks to these different motivations, and so how can we tap into those much more intentionally? So Toss It Away, No Way really speaks to this waste not, want not motivation, where they're coming at it less from planet, but more from this waste perspective. The next one here is, do you need help repairing your mixer? Come to a repair cafe in your area. Want to do the repair yourself? Then find a repair guide at iFixit. So rugged independence would be really drawn to this idea of getting this repair guide and doing it themselves, whereas clearly like you don't want to throw it away as the waste not, want not group. And then this last message here that I wanted to share with you is saying how it's not only fun, but it's good for the environment, and repair knowledge is preserved. And so that really taps into those practical traditions. And then the last one is contribute to a better environment in your own neighborhood and start to be part of the movement, right? And so that speaks much more to eco trends. And so how can we start to use some of those messages in order to appeal to this whole set of 7 motivations that could be moved to be doing the work? And in our report, you actually find out lots and lots more information about how to reach them. And so I hope that gives you some really cool new ideas about how we might actually use messaging to tap into very different ways of thinking about why to repair. I'll just move to the last slide here and I'll pop it into the chat, but that's where the full report can be downloaded.
Thank you, Dagmar. I want to do your long 2-hour workshop of that. That was fantastic research. Dagmar, Alondra, Alex, and then previously Moji and Terra. Thank you all so much for helping us address and talk about why people didn't come when we built it, and then how do we build it together. So we're going to take a brief break and then kind of have a buffer. We're going to open up the breakout rooms after the break for the incentivizing repair, and then storytelling for reuse and repair break, while Cami wants us all to be caffeinated with a coffee break. All right, see you all soon.
Or drink of choice, whatever you want. Stay
That
hydrated.
looks like hot cocoa with some marshmallows and a nice little peppermint.
Seasonally appropriate.